What challenges still face you on the guitar? What are you still
I'd
trying
love to learn to play it, that'd be nice.
What are you trying to teach yourself?
I don't know what I'm trying to do. I think I've been forced into playing songs that carry a melody because I don't sing, And Al Jardine said to me, why don't you sing? Get a voice trainer and sing, because that'll open up a million doors. I said, because I don't feel right doing it. It was not my vocation was a guitar, and there are people that sing a lot better than I do, with or without the trainer. But he may have got something, maybe if somebody plonked the song that was a Jeff Beck perfect song that would reach people, then I would have a go at it. But even then it would have to pass the stringent rules that I have about voices and whether it would just be justifiable for me to sing or not. I mean, see, when you say sing, Jimmy never sang. He sort of threw the lyric at you, in a very casual way, but it worked.
Hello everyone, this is Douster and welcome back to another video, and in this video I will be discussing the life and music legacy of Jeff Beck. This video is also a tribute to Jeff as he had passed away in 2023. Jeff Beck was one of the greatest and influential guitarists of our time, who was also known for his variety of guitar sounds. Although he may be gone, he still continues to inspire many people or guitarists around the world, especially artists and friends that he made along the way throughout his life. Jeff Beck was born on June 24th, 1944, and his real name was Jeffrey Arnold Beck. In the year that he was born, World War II was nearing its end. A young Jeffrey was born in Wallington, Surrey, England, which is now known as Greater London, England. His parents were Arnold and Ethel Beck, and also had a sister named Anita. At the age of 6, Jeff was introduced to the electric guitar once he heard the song How High the Moon by Les Paul on the radio. He asked his mom what that instrument was and responded to Jeff that it was an electric guitar. It was at that moment that Jeff had wanted to become an electric guitar player. By the age of 10, Jeff had begun his musical journey by first singing in a church choir. Throughout his childhood, Jeff had attended Sutton Manor School and Sutton East County Secondary Modern School. Other than Les Paul, Jeff's other music influences were Cliff Gallup, who was the lead guitarist for Gene Vincent and the Blues Caps, Chuck Berry, B.B. King, Steve Cropper, and many more. He also considered Lonnie Mack as one of his influences, as he stated that Lonnie was unjustly overlooked. Jeff learned how to play the guitar through a borrowed one and attempted to build his own guitar. When he tried building his own guitar, Jeff had used cigar boxes for the body of the guitar by gluing them together. For the neck of the guitar, he had used an unsanded fence post and had also included model aircraft control lines for the strings. As for the frets, Jeff would paint them. During his adolescent years, Jeff was introduced to Jimmy Page by his sister Anita. The 60s was the time when Jeff's music career really began, as he would soon get involved with the music scene. Jeff had attended the Wimbledon School of Art, now called Wimbledon College of Arts. Around the early 60s, Jeff was also a painter, a decorator, a groundsman on a golf course, and a car paint sprayer for a brief period of time. While in Wimbledon, Jeff had started playing a succession of groups. In 1963, Jeff had formed the Night Shift. After Ian Stewart of the Rolling Stones had introduced Beck to R&B, Jeff and the Night Shift had played at the 100 Club in Oxford Street, located in London, England. That same year, Jeff had joined the Rumbles, who were a Croydon city-based band, and was also their lead guitarist for a short period of time. The band played mostly Buddy Holly and Gene Vincent songs, as Jeff would mimic different guitar styles while playing these songs. After his time with the Rumbles, Jeff had joined the Tridents, a band from the Chiswick area. He considered the Tridents his scene because they had played flat-out R&B that sounded like Jimmy Reed, as Jeff had wanted to put a more rock sound to the songs. Somewhere around 1963, Beck was married to a woman named Patricia Brown. In 1964, Jeff was a part of Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages' song Dracula's Daughter, Come Back Baby, for Oriole Records. Jeff was a session guitarist in 1964 for a song called I'm Not Running Away, with a B-side called So Sweet by the Fits and Stars. Then in 1965, Jeff had joined the Yardbirds, but only lasted for about 18 months. In the beginning with the Yardbirds, Jeff had replaced Eric Clapton, as Jeff was recommended by Jimmy Page to join the band. Jeff's early years with the Yardbirds had also brought a lot into the band, such as them having their songs hit the top 40 hits charts. Some of those hits in 1965 included Shapes of Things and Heart of Soul. Heart of Soul helped shape the psychedelic sound of the 1960s. It was released as a track on the Yardbirds' Having a Rave Up album and had a commercial fuzz box that created an effect that captivated Beck. In a quote regarding Jeff's sound, he said this, "Everybody thinks of the 60s as something they really weren't. It was a frustrating period of my life. The electric equipment just wasn't up to the sounds I had in my head." After gaining success with the Yardbirds' music, Beck would then use a 1954 Fender Esquire guitar in order to create a unique sound. The only record Jeff had done with the Yardbirds was the album Roger the Engineer, titled Over, Under, Sideways, Down in the USA, that was released in 1966. That same year in May, Beck had recorded an instrumental song called Beck's Bolero that also featured Jimmy Page on a 12-string rhythm guitar, Keith Moon on drums, John Paul Jones on bass, and Nicky Hopkins on piano. It did not have the Yardbirds members in the song, even though Jeff was still working with them at that time period. The next month, Jimmy Page had joined the Yardbirds on bass, but would then get promoted to be the second lead guitarist. Beck and Page were filmed together as they had played a song called Stroll On for the 1966 film Blow Up. Once 1967 had begun, things would get rough for Jeff as his marriage would end as well as his time with the Yardbirds band. The Yardbirds ended up firing Jeff even though they were on the rise to popularity. He got fired because Jeff would not show up for gigs. He also had a demanding personality and as well as an explosive temper. Not only that, but Jeff was also a perfectionist as he wanted everything to be perfect. His marriage to Patricia Brown ended since Jeff's time was mostly spent on the Yardbirds. After that, Jeff had begun a relationship with American model and actress Mary Hughes. Once Jeff was let go of the Yardbirds, he moved in with Mary soon after. Pink Floyd member Nick Mason said in his autobiography that he wanted to recruit Jeff Beck for Pink Floyd as their new guitarist after the departure of their original lead singer Syd Barrett, but that none of the other members were brave enough to ask Jeff. After getting fired, Jeff had recorded a lot of solo singles for pop producer Mickey Most. Those songs were Hi-Ho Silver Lining and Tallyman, which also included Jeff's vocals. Eventually, Jeff had formed his own band and called it the Jeff Beck Group. The band included Rod Stewart on vocals, Ronnie Woods on bass, Nicky Hopkins on piano, and Ainsley Dunbar on drums. Ainsley would later be replaced by Mickey Waller. Altogether, the band had produced 2 albums for Columbia Records, also called Epic in the US, titled Truth, that was released in July 1968, and Beck Ula released in July of 1969, a year after the Truth album. For 4 decades, Jeff was an Epic recording artist. The band eventually released a single from the Truth album called You Shook Me that was written by Willie Dixon and was first recorded by Muddy Waters. The interesting and funny thing about it was that Led Zeppelin also had released their own version of You Shook Me on their first debut album that had come out in January of 1969, but Jeff and his band had already released the single 5 months earlier than Led Zeppelin's song. You Shook Me reached number 15 on the Billboard charts in 1968. When the Truth album had finally been released, drummer Mickey Waller would then be replaced by Tony Newman. By 1968, Beck had begun a relationship with English model Celia Hammond that would last about 18 years. Celia also made an appearance in the album cover of Truth, but as a portrait. Before the 70s had started, Jeff's work with the Yardbirds and his work with the Jeff Beck Group, especially the Truth album from 1968, were seminal influences on heavy metal music. Then in 1969, the Jeff Beck Group had released their next album, Beck Ula, which was well received, but was less successful commercially and critically. The band, however, disbanded in July of 1969 due to resentment and touring incidents. After the Jeff Beck Group had broken up, Beck got involved in the Music from the Creek Super Sessions project that was billed as A.N. Other and had contributed on lead guitar for 4 songs. One of those songs was co-written by him. That same year, Beck was approached to join the band The Rolling Stones after the death of their member Brian Jones, but Beck had refused. Aside from music, Beck had become a vegetarian that same year and was a patron of the Foley Wildlife Rescue Trust. In September 1969, Beck had collaborated with the rhythm section of Vanilla Fudge bassist Tim Bogert and drummer Carmen Apice when they were in England to resolve contractual issues. However, in December of that year, Beck had gotten into a car accident near Maidstone and had his skull fractured. The collaboration or plan was postponed for 2.5 years, and around that time, Bogert and Apice had formed a new group called Cactus. Once Beck had fully recovered in 1970, he went on to form a new band with drummer Cozy Powell. Beck, Powell, and a producer named Mickey Most had flown to the U.S. and were able to recover many tracks at Motown's famed Studio A in Hitsville, USA, with the Funk Brothers, who happened to be Motown's in-house band. Unfortunately, the tracks were never released. In April 1971, Beck had gotten a new lineup that included guitarist-vocalist Bobby Tench, keyboard player Max Middleton, and bassist Clive Chawman. The group performed together as the Jeff Beck Group, but with a different sound that was different from the first lineup. They recorded their first album together called Rough and Ready, which was released in October 1961. Beck had co-written 6 of the album's 7 tracks, as Middleton only wrote 1 song. Rough and Ready had elements of soul, rhythm, and blues, as well as jazz. The music from this album would foreshadow the direction that Beck's music would go throughout the decade. In July of 1972, the Jeff Beck Group had released a second album that was recorded at the TMI Studios in Memphis, Tennessee. Beck had Steve Cropper work as the producer for this album. The album had a strong soul influence and had 5 out of 9 tracks that were covers of songs from American artists. I Got to Have a Song by Stevie Wonder was one of those covers that Beck had used for the second album. After the second album had been released, the band had dissolved, leading Beck's management to release a statement with the fusion of the musical styles of the various members has been successful with the terms of individual musicians, but they didn't feel it had led to the creation of a new musical style with the strength they had originally sought. Beck once again had collaborated with bassist Tim Bogert and drummer Carmen Apice, who were available after the breakup of their band Cactus. So they continued touring as the Jeff Beck Group in August of 1972. The 2 men also had fulfilled contractual obligations with Jeff's promoter that had included a lineup of Bogert, Apice, Max Middleton, and vocalist Kim Milford. When he did 6 appearances, Milford was then replaced by Bobby Tench, who was flown in from the UK for the Ari Crown Theatre Chicago performance as his tour would end at the Paramount Northwest Theatre in Seattle, Washington. Once the tour had ended, Tench and Middleton left the band, causing the 3 that were left to be known as Beck, Bogert, and Apice. Apice was then placed as the lead vocalist of the group, while Bogert and Beck would contribute occasionally. In September of 1972. The trio were still known as the Jeff Beck Group on the Rock at the Oval, which had marked the start of a tour schedule of the UK, the Netherlands, and Germany. Another U.S. tour began in October 1972, which had started at the Hollywood Auditorium, Florida, and ended on November 11, 1972, at the Warehouse in New Orleans. The Beck, Bogert, and Apice album was then released in April 1973 through Epic Records. Critics acknowledged the band's instrumental prowess, but the album was not well received commercially except for its cover of Stevie Wonder's hit Superstition. On July 3, 1973, Beck had performed with English singer David Bowie for David's songs The Genie, Love Me Do, and Around and Around. The show was filmed but would not be released until 2022 in David Bowie's documentary called Moonage Daydream. Then in October 1973, Beck had recorded tracks for Michael Fanelli's album Lane Changer. Once January of 1974 had started, Beck, Bogert, and Appice played at the Rainbow Theatre in London as part of a European tour. In February of that same year, Beck, Bogert, and Appice's Live in Japan was released by Epic Sony, even though it was recorded during their 1973 Japan tour, and was then released as a live album. A couple months later, Beck, Bogert, and Appice would then break up in April that same year before their second studio album would be finished. The producer that was behind the second album was Jimmy Miller. This last recorded word by the band previewed new material that was for their second album and was also included on the bootleg At Last Rainbow. After the breakup, Beck had entered the Underhill studio and met a band called Up, which he then recruited to be the backing band for Jeff's appearance on the BBC TV program Guitar Workshop in August of 1974. Beck had produced and played on Up's self-titled debut album, as well as their second album called This Way Up, but Jeff's contributions for that album were uncredited. That same year, Jeff had participated in recording sessions for the first album by former Jeff Beck group member Bobby Tench's band, Hummingbird, but Beck did not contribute to the album. Beck, Bogert, and Appice's concert at the Rainbow Theatre in London would eventually be in full broadcast on the US show Rock Around the World in September of 1974. In October of that same year, Beck had begun to record instrumental sessions at Air Studios with Max Middleton, who was also working with Hummingbird bassist Phil Chen and drummer Richard Bailey, with George Martin as the producer and arranger. At the start of 1975, Jeff had switched his instrumental style in order to focus on an innovative sound that would form new styles and genres such as blues rock, hard rock, jazz fusion, and a blend of guitar rock and electronica. He had recorded 2 successful albums in 1975 and in 1976 as a solo artist, but did not establish or maintain commercial success as he did with bands or other people that he had collaborated with before. With the record instrumental sessions, Jeff had worked on his solo album Blow by Blow, which was released in March of 1975. His solo album showed Beck's technical prowess in jazz rock. The album was able to reach number 4 in the charts and was Beck's most commercially successful release. Beck was very attentive and concerned of the details due to the overdubs and was often dissatisfied with the solos, which caused him to go to Air Studios until he was satisfied enough. Months later, after he had finished the sessions, producer George Martin received a telephone call from Beck, who had wanted to record a solo section with Martin again. Martin was puzzled about it as he had already had Jeff's records hitting the stores by now. Beck would eventually put together a live band for a US tour, which started by a small and unannounced gig at the Newlands Tavern in Peckham, London. He toured from April to May of 1975, mostly supporting the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and was able to get back Max Middleton on keyboards, but with a new rhythm section along with bassist Wilbur Bascombe and noted session drummer Bernard Pretty Purdie, who was associating with the band Hummingbird. One day at a show in Cleveland at the Music Hall in May of 1975, Jeff had become frustrated with an early version of a talkbox that he had used on his arrangement of the Beatles song She's a Woman. Frustration got a hold of Beck as well when one of his strings had broken, causing him to toss his legendary Yardbird era Fender Stratocaster guitar off the stage. Jeff had also tossed the talkbox and was able to finish the show with a Les Paul guitar instead of using his talkbox. During this tour, Beck had performed at Yuya Uchida's World Rock Festival and played 8 songs with drummer Purdie. He also performed a guitar and drum instrumental with Johnny Yoshinaga, and at the end of the Uchida World Rock Festival, he had joined a live jam with bassist Felix Pappalardi from the band Mountain and vocalist Akira Joe Yamanaka from the Flower Traveling Band. His set with Purdie was the only one that was recorded and released to the public. In 1976, Jeff had returned to the studio and recorded his next album, titled Wired. Ex-Mahavishnu orchestra drummer and composer Narada Mikhail Walden and keyboardist Jan Hammer would contribute and work with Jeff for this album. The album has a jazz rock fusion style that's almost similar to Walden and Hammer's music style. Jeff had promoted his Wired album by playing a show at the Roundhouses in May of 1976 in order to support Alvin Lee. Somewhere in 1977, Jeff got nominated for a Grammy for Best Pop Instrumental Performance for his album Wired, but did not win. Afterwards, Jeff went on a 7-month-long world tour, which had resulted in another live album titled Jeff Beck with the Jan Hammer Group Live, that would then be released that same year in 1977. After the tour, Jeff had taken up U.S. residency so that he could pay lower taxes up until he went back to the UK in the fall of 1977. Then in spring of 1978, Jeff had begun to rehearse for a projected appearance at the Newworth Festival along former member of Return to Forever bassist Stanley Clarke and drummer Jerry Brown. However, the appearance got cancelled after Brown had dropped out. In November 1978, Beck had toured Japan for 3 weeks with the group consisting of Stanley Clarke and newcomers at the time Tony Hymas on keyboards and Simon Phillips on drums. Jeff would eventually work on another album at the Who's Rampart Studios in London throughout the year of 1979. That album would then be titled There and Back Again and would be released in June of 1980. The album had 3 tracks, composed and recorded with Jan Hammer, while the other 5 tracks were written with Hymas. Stanley Clarke was replaced by Mo Foster on bass for this album, as well as the rest of the tours. After the There and Back album, Beck would then tour the US, Japan, and the UK. Around that time, Beck had made a couple of live appearances with Eric Clapton at the Amnesty International Sponsor Benefit Concerts, which were called at one point the Secret Policeman's Other Ball. The duo had performed songs such as Crossroads, Further On Up the Road, and a Stevie Wonder cover of 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers. Afterwards, Beck was featured in an all-star band finale performance of I Shall Be, which featured Clapton, Sting, Phil Collins, Donovan, and Bob Geldof. Beck and Clapton, along with Jimmy Page, did a benefit concert called Arms Concert for multiple sclerosis, where they performed songs such as Tulsa Time and Layla. Once the 80s had begun, Jeff had taken a 4-year break as he was going through tinnitus, which caused him to change his recording schedule. Jeff had also stopped using guitar picks during the 80s. Instead, he would use his thumb to pluck the guitar strings. For the volume knob, Jeff would use his finger ring and his little finger on the vibrato bar. When he plucked the guitar string, it would fade in the sound with the volume knob, causing Jeff to create a unique sound that resembles a human voice, among other effects. In 1985, Beck had released his 5th studio album, Flash, which featured a variety of vocalists such as Rod Stewart, a former bandmate of Jeff's, who did a song called People Get Ready, which is a rendition or performance of Curtis Mayfield's song. The song was a hit once it had been released as the first single from the Flash album. With the single came out a music video that had aired on MTV every hour back then. Beck and Clapton ended up doing a lot of shows during the mid-80s, but never did a full tour. In 1986, Jeff had won a Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the song Escape. Beck had also made more appearances with other performers, such as a song with Nicolette Larson for the 1988 movie Twins, as Beck had played guitar. He then returned to doing instrumental music by releasing the 1989 album Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, where Beck, for the first time in his discography, became a fingerstyle guitarist. This would be his 3rd album, as he had released 2 other albums during the 80s, By 1990, Jeff had won another Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop album with Terry Bozzio and Tony Hymas. That same year, Beck had worked with John Bon Jovi for John's solo album called Blaze of Glory, as Beck would play the main solo in the Blaze of Glory song. The song was also featured in the Young Guns 2 movie. Beck had also performed for another movie called Days of Thunder for Hans Zimmer's score. During the 90s, Beck had a higher musical output, meaning that he started doing more music work with other musicians and projects. In 1991, Fender, an American manufacturer for musical instruments, released a Jeff Beck Stratocaster that is still being sold as of today. Jeff's compilation, Beckology, was released in 1991 and included tracks such as Blues Deluxe and BBA Boogie from the At Last Rainbow concert from the 70s. He then got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992 as a member of the Yardbirds. In his induction speech, Beck had said this about the Yardbirds in a humorous way. "Someone told me I should be proud tonight, but I'm not, because they kicked me out. They did. F them." His former bandmate Rod Stewart also got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, as Jeff gave an induction speech saying that he and Rod have a love-hate relationship. Sometime that year, Beck had played lead guitar for Roger Waters' 1992 concept album, Amused to Death. Beck had also rehearsed with Guns N' Roses for their concert in Paris around 1992, but did not play at the actual concert, as Jeff had developed ear damage from Matt Sorum's cymbals crashing, causing Jeff to somehow get temporarily deaf. Somewhere in 1992, Jeff had recorded the instrumental soundtrack for Frankie's House and 1993's Crazy Legs, which was a tribute to 1950s rockabilly group Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps and their influential guitarist Cliff Gallup. Sometime in 1993, Jeff had joined Paul Rogers of Bad Company on the album Muddy Waters Blues, a tribute to Muddy Waters. He also played lead guitar for Kate Bush's 1993 album The Red Shoes and Love Scenes by Beverly Craven. That same year, Jeff had gotten a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the song Hound Dog, but did not win. In 1994, Beck was nominated for another Grammy of the same category for the song High Heeled Sneakers, but did not win. Then in 1999, Jeff had released his first foray into guitar-based electronica, Who Else? The Who Else album had allowed Beck to work with female instrumentalist Jennifer Baton for their first collaboration. They also did touring, writing, and recording, as this was the first time Jeff had worked with another guitarist since playing with the Yardbirds. Once the year 2000 came along, Beck had received 2 Grammy nominations for Best Rock and Pop Instrumental Performances for the songs A Day in the Life and What Mama Said, but did not win either of them. After releasing his 2000 album, You Had It Coming, Beck had continued to work with Jennifer for the post-release tour in 2001. In 2002, Beck had won his first 3rd Grammy Award for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the track Dirty Mind from the album, You Had It Coming. On this album, Beck had stated the following: "I spent a lot of time in the studio with Andy Wright, just toying around with different sounds. We had a great time, but I bogged down in the possibilities." Beck had released his 9th studio album, Jeff, in 2003. His new electro guitar style continued to prove that he was still a dominant guitarist since he used it in the previous albums. He was an opening act for B.B. King in the summer of 2003, soon after. Then in 2004, Jeff had won his 4th Grammy Award for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the song Plan B. Jeff had eventually appeared at Eric Clapton's Crossroads Guitar Festival in 2004. That same year in 2004, Beck was featured on the song 54 through 46 Was My Number by Tots and the Mados as part of the album True Love, which had won the Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album. In 2005, Jeff had married Sandra Cash, and no, she is not related to singer Johnny Cash, in case you guys are wondering. Somewhere in 2007, Jeff had accompanied Kelly Clarkson for her cover of Patty Griffin's song Up to the Mountain for American Idol's episode Idol Gives Back. It was recorded live and was immediately released for sale. That same year in 2007, Jeff had made another appearance for Clapton's Crossroads Guitar Festival and had performed with Vinnie Colaiuta, Jason Rebello, and 21-year-old bassist at the time, Tao Wilkenfeld. In early 2009, Beck had announced a world tour and had the same lineup of musicians from 2 years before as they played and recorded at Ronnie Scott's in London to a sold-out audience. Beck then played in Morrissey's 2009 album Years of Refusal for the song Black Cloud. Within 2009, Harvey Goldsmith became Beck's manager. On April 4th, 2009, Jeff got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame again, but as a solo artist. Jimmy Page was the presenter. That same year, 2009, Jeff had performed the song Train Kept A-Rollin', along with Page, Ronnie Wood, Joe Perry, Flea, the entire band of Metallica, and Jason Newsted. On July 4th, 2009, David Gilmour had joined Beck on stage at the Albert Hall. They traded solos on the song Jerusalem and closed the show with Hi-Ho Silver Lining. In 2010, Jeff had won another Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the song A Day in the Life. Then in April of 2010, Beck had released his 10th album, Emotion and Commotion. The album had a mixture of original songs and covers such as Over the Rainbow, Puccini's Nessun Dorma, and Benjamin Britten's Corpus Christi Carol that was interpreted by Beck's uniquely sensitive touch. There were backup vocals from Joss Stone and Imelda May. That same year, Beck had collaborated in Imagine for Herbie Hancock's album, The Imagine Project. The song has also featured artists such as Seal, Pink, India Ari, Konono N1, Omao, Sangari, and many more. Beck also had a world tour in 2010 with Grammy-winning musician Narada Michael Walden on drums, Rhonda Smith on bass, and Jason Rebello on keyboards. On June 9th of that same year, Beck had recorded a DVD with Imelda May's band called Rock and Roll Party, honoring Les Paul. It was a concert at the Iridium in New York City that featured several Les Paul songs. Then on October 25th, Beck had released a live album titled Live and Exclusive from the Grammy Museum. In 2011, Jeff had won 3 Grammys for Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals for the song Imagine, Best Pop Instrumental Performance for the song Nessun Dorma, and Best Rock Instrumental Performance for the song Hammerhead. Beck also got nominated for Best Rock Performance by a duo or group with vocals for the song I Put a Spell on You and Best Rock Album Emotion and Commotion, but did not win the 2 nominations. That same year, in July of 2011, Beck had received 2 honorary degrees from British universities. He was honored with a fellowship from the University of the Arts London in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the field of music. 3 days later, on the 21st, Beck had received an honorary doctorate from the University of Sussex by Sanjeev Bhaskar, the university's chancellor. Jeff got the doctorate in order to acknowledge his outstanding musical career and to celebrate the relationship between the university and the Brighton Institute of Modern Music, BIMM. In 2012, Beck was nominated for Best Rock Album called Rock and Roll Party, honoring Les Paul, but did not win. Then in 2013, Beck was announced to perform with the Beach Boys founder, Brian Wilson, on Brian's solo album with Capitol Records, alongside Beach Boys members Al Jardine and David Marks. On June 20th of that same year, Wilson had announced on his website that the work material would be split into 3 albums. The first album would have pop songs, the second album would have instrumental tracks with Jeff, and the third album would contain interwoven tracks dubbed The Suite. Besides doing Brian's album work, Beck would also join Wilson, Jardine, and Marks on an 18-date fall 2013 tour that had started in late September and ended in late October. Beck made clear that he regarded sharing the stage with Wilson as a complete honor to himself. Once 2014 had begun, Beck would do a world tour in Japan. He released a 3-track CD called Yosogai on April 5th of that year, and was yet to be finalized at the time of the Japan tour. In November of that same year, Beck had joined Joss Stone at the Royal British Legion's Festival Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall for a music performance. In 2015, Beck was ranked number 5 in Rolling Stone's magazine's list of the 100 greatest guitarists. Then in 2016, Beck had released an album called Loud Hailer and teamed up with Carmen Vandenberg and Rosie Bones from the rock band Bones UK. The album protested the state of the world with song titles such as Thug's Club and Scared for the Children to OIL, Can't Get Enough of That Sticky. On October 16, 2020, Beck had released a new single and collaborated with actor Johnny Depp in a cover song for John Lennon's song Isolation, as the two men had an ongoing musical collaboration since this would be their first record release together. They had recorded music together for some time as the tracks were produced a year previously. Beck said that he wanted to release it in 2020 because of being influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. We weren't expecting to release it so soon, but given all the hard days and true isolation through in these challenging times, we decided now might be the right time to let you all hear it. On Dion DiMucci's 2020 album Blues with Friends, Beck had played lead guitar for the song Can't Start Over Again. Sometime in 2020, Beck had contributed to a supergroup recording of Going Home, theme of the local hero, in order to support the Teenage Cancer Trust charity and Teen Cancer America. This would be his final recording as the song was released in 2024. In the meantime, in 2020, Beck had lived in a building called River Hall in the civil parish of Wadhurst, East Sussex, England, in what would be his last place that he lived in. On June 2nd, 2022, Beck was on the news after Johnny Depp had appeared with him at the Sage in Gateshead after celebrating his victory from the high-profile defamation case Johnny had with Amber Heard. That same week, they also had performed at the Royal Albert Hall in London. Together, they had released an album called 18, with the first single being This Is a Song for Miss Hedy Lamarr, as it was announced on June 10, 2022. Then on June 24, 2022, Beck was featured on Ozzy Osbourne's album Patient Number 9 for 2 songs, which are Patient Number 9, the album's title, and 1,000 Shades. At the start of 2023, Jeff's life had come to an end. Jeff Beck died on January 10, 2023, at the age of 78 from a bacterial meningitis infection at a hospital that is close to the River Hall building. He never had children. Musicians close to Jeff expressed their grievances through social media. Jimmy Page wrote on his platform after finding out about Jeff's death with the following: "The six-string warrior is no longer here for us to admire the spell he could weave around our mortal emotions. Jeff could channel music from the ethereal, his technique unique, his imaginations apparently limitless. Jeff, I will miss you along with your millions of fans." Rolling Stones lead singer Mick Jagger wrote, "With the death of Jeff Beck, we have lost a wonderful man and one of the greatest guitar players in the world. We will all miss him so much." Jeff's former bandmate and Rolling Stones member Ronnie Wood stated, "Now Jeff has gone. I feel like one of my band of brothers has left this world, and I'm going to dearly miss him." Beck's funeral service was held at St. Mary's Church in Beddington, Sutton, on February 3rd, almost a month after. People who attended Jeff's service were Johnny Depp, Rod Stewart, Eric Clapton, Tom Jones, Ronnie Wood, David Gilmour, Bob Geldof, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and Chrissie Hynde. Jimmy gave a eulogy at the service and called Jeff the Quiet Chief. During the Grammy season, Jeff got nominated for a Grammy for the last time for Best Rock Instrumental Performance in the song Patient Number 9, but sadly lost. Days after the memorial, Jeff got a private burial. Only a small number had attended, such as Jeff's widow Sandra, the couple's dog, and Johnny Depp, as the burial was held at River Hall. On January 22, 2025, 90 of Beck's guitars had been auctioned by Christie's, a British auction house in London, as well as over 40 other items from his personal collection. Whatever was left over of that auction would be displayed to the public in Los Angeles, California. Currently, Beck has been ranked in the top 5 of Rolling Stones magazine and other magazines' lists for greatest guitarists. Rolling Stones magazine has described Jeff as one of the most influential lead guitarists in the rock music scene. Jeff has also won a total of 8 Grammys throughout his life, winning Best Rock Instrumental Performance 6 times, as well as winning 3 different categories in 2010. He has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, one for being in the Yardbirds band and the other as a solo artist. The biggest guitarists that came out of the Yardbirds were Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, and Eric Clapton. In a quote, Jeff had explained why he was interested in the electric guitar. "I was interested in electric guitar even before I knew the difference between electric and acoustic. The electric guitar seemed to be a totally fascinating plank of wood with knobs and switches on it. I just had to have one," said Jeff. In his early life, Jeff had left his mark on hard rock, jazz fusion, and modern music history. The influences that inspired Jeff and made him into a guitar legend were Les Paul, The Shadows, Cliff Gallup, Ravi Shankar, Roy Buchanan, Chet Atkins, Django Reinhardt, Steve Cropper, and Lonnie Mack. Jeff also praised guitarist John McLaughlin for John's different guitar styles by combining music such as Indian music with jazz and classicals. He had also considered McLaughlin one of the greatest guitarists alive. McLaughlin also praised Beck and considers Beck as his favorite progressive rock artist. Beck would play Fender Telecaster and Gibson Les Paul instruments, but only for special occasions, especially in the 2000s. His amplifiers were primarily Fender and Marshall. He would frequently use wah-wah pedals and slides both live and in the studio. Beck's 1954 Fender Esquire guitar, now owned by Seymour W. Duncan, is currently housed in the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Guitarist and author Jack Wilkins stated that Jeff was known for his technical skill and versatile playing. Musicologist and historian Bob Gula said this about Jeff: "Beck is credited for popularizing the use of audio feedback and distortion on guitar. He also mentioned that during Jeff's time with the Yardbirds, he had provided experimentation with feedback, distortion, and fuzz tone as it pushed the band into directions that would open the door for psychedelic rock, while jolting British rock forward. In total, Jeff has done 17 studio albums and has contributed his work with other artists, such as the Yardbirds, Tim Boger, and Carmen Apice. He had collaborated with Johnny Depp, Big Time Playboys, the Honey Drippers, and Jed Leiber. Interesting and final facts: Jeff was into classic Ford hot rods and would work on the exteriors and engines of the cars by himself. There was also an asteroid named after him called 38431 Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck was and is one of the most influential guitarists of our time. With his fingers, he was able to create unique sounds that were out of this world. He was also a perfectionist that wanted everything to be perfect. The way he played guitar was out of this world, with the likes of Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, and David Gilmour. Beck did a lot for the rock community, and for that, his legacy lives on as a guitar hero. His music really made you feel raw emotions once you listen to it. That's pretty much all I have for this video. Comment, like, or subscribe if you want to, and take care of your mental health and everyone around you, and I'll do the same too. Thank you guys for watching this video, and rest in peace to Jeff Beck, the guitar legend.